Do you think that's because demand for factoring software has shot up since then?
I think because we moved out of our comfort zone because we're doing new things.
So it's not to do with the proportion of Islamic population. I would maybe say, could the UK be on the list?
UK number one. In Europe, largest from terms of volume, activities of Islamic finance are taking place.
Where are you seeing the most opportunity in software implementation?
The area what I work right now is how do you generate a real-time risk score for each clients who are actually doing daily business.
I'm Mohika Ravishankar, Deputy Editor at Trade Finance Global.
Federico Avian-Borgmeier, Chief Partner Officer at FCOM.
I'm Abdurrahman El-Biltaji. I'm Islamic factoring expert and sales manager for MENA region for FCOM.
I work as a data scientist at FCOM.
Welcome to Trade Finance Talks, your go-to trade, treasury and payments podcast. Brought to you by Trade Finance Global.
Hello and welcome to Trade Finance Talks. And we're coming to you today from the 2025 Sibos conference in Frankfurt, Germany. I'm joined by Federico, Vinay and Abdelrahman of FCOM, and today we're going to be discussing future trends in factoring, whether that's Islamic factoring or AI implementation. Federico, Vinay, Abdelrahman, welcome to Trade Finance Talks.
Thank you, Mahika. Thank you for having me and having us.
And to start off, let's just have some quick introductions. Just introduce yourselves and tell us about your role within FCOM. Vinay, why don't we start with you?
Thank you. I work as a data scientist at FCOM. My background comes as a mix of industry and academia, so where I could lay my foundations right in the field of AI and machine learning. And what interests me right now is creating solutions for risk in factoring to identify risk upfront, detecting fraud, and creating a solution or software solution for identification of these complex problems in factoring.
Thanks a lot, Vinay. And Federico, on to you.
Yes, Federico Avian-Borgmeier. I'm Chief Partner Officer at FCOM for the last 5 years, but I've been with FCOM for, I think, something like 13, 14 years, because I used to be a supplier of FCOM for artificial intelligence product in the past. And this is a little bit like my background as well. I'm an engineer by training. I learned AI back in the 1980s, but I've been in commercial sales and in consulting in the banking industry for now, I don't even want to say it, but it's over 30 years now in different areas. And lately, as I said, in the factoring software solutions space, basically.
Abdelrahman, on to you.
I'm Abdurrahman El-Biltaji. I'm Islamic factoring expert and sales manager for MENA region for FCOM. And my background comes from finance and investment as a study. And I have been grown up in a family that has been in the Islamic finance industry for almost 30 to 40 years. But I'm 23 years old, so let's count my experience for these couple of years, especially through the MENA region.
Thanks a lot, guys. I think maybe it would be best to start off for our listeners with a bit of background. Factoring is a relatively niche product. And Federico, I'm wondering what kind of trends you've noticed within this industry, particularly when putting together new types of factoring software. So what pain points does this address?
I have to go perhaps a little bit back into the COVID time. That was when Anuf, who's right now also with me here at the show, Anuf is one of the co-founders of FCOM, set together during COVID at the, of course, relative distance, and used the time of being confined during that period of time to setting up the new strategic outlook for the FCOM activities for FCOM as a company. So we looked at the markets, we looked at what was out there, what was happening, and we saw particular trends happening. Obviously, one of them was the continuing growth of factoring across the globe into many geographies. Europe is one of the most mature areas in the world in factoring. We do almost 3 trillion euros in factoring and supply chain volume per year, which is a little bit nearly 3% of the global GDP, and 4 trillion is the world total. So we thought if the world was going to be as developed as Europe, then the rest of the world outside Europe is going to emerge a lot. That means we have to go out of our comfort zone and we have to expand globally. So this is something that we have been doing extensively over the last 5 years. And it's the correct thing to do because the regions outside Europe are growing extensively. The Middle East, North Africa, Africa as such, India is one of the very big hubs, but also Southeast Asia. Let's take China out for a moment because China is something in itself. And then the Latin markets, Latin America. So these geographies are growing fast. And so we have a hub there. It's not a pain point, but it's a definite trend where we see internationalization and companies go global. In spite of the trends that we see in tariffs, as we know, since the beginning of this year with the US administration, we also have seen that trade keeps growing in spite of all of that. So it hasn't come to a halt. This is one thing. And then we said, if this is what we want to do, then we probably need to address the needs of those markets. And one of them that we identified also during those back then in the COVID time was the Islamic finance markets growing very fast as well. So we said, if we want to go into those markets, we need to speak their language. Moving back and forth, this is why Abderrahman is sitting here with us today. And the other area is clearly technology has been evolving. I remember 10 years ago at Sibos, the word artificial intelligence was in nobody's mind. 5 years ago, maybe a few companies were spelling it. And as you know, Mahika, during this particular Sibos, everyone is using AI. Well, we started AI not this year. We started AI 13 years ago. As I explained at the beginning, I came in and brought AI into FCOM, and now we have a team at FCOM that's developing AI, and we'll come to that later.
I wanted to follow up on you explained that this strategy was developed during COVID times, maybe when the isolation allowed Arnulf to sit down and look at the strategy. How did the finance landscape during COVID impact your decision to focus on these emerging markets, or did it impact it at all? Because it was a very unique time. Obviously, COVID almost works as a case study in itself.
I guess we use the time to just step back because, as you know, when you're in your day-to-day business, you don't have the time to reflect and sit down and take the time to reinvent yourself. It was a fantastic time. I asked Arnulf, what are you doing right now? And he said, nothing. And I said, well, that's not much. Let's do something. I think that was worth the time investing because the decisions made or taken during that period of time are having a big repercussion on what we are today. Just to give you some numbers, since basically COVID till today, the company grew 50%, 50.
Remarkable. Do you think that's because demand for factoring software has shot up since then?
I think because we moved out of our comfort zone because we're doing new things. This is the reason why we're now where we are. If we were doing the same thing as we did over the time, then we'd not be nearly as far as we are today.
And speaking about emerging from your comfort zone, Abderrahman, I want to turn to you to talk a little bit more about Islamic factoring, which you mentioned is your area of expertise. What kind of geographical trends have you been observing in factoring development, and which regions have been more receptive to software?
Before we talk about the geography itself, since factoring is a way of financing at the end of the day, so I want just to showcase a little bit how the Islamic finance faced that, let's say, increase in volume and so on. It has been there for years, okay? After the financial crisis of 2008, the demand and the recognition of Islamic finance increased a lot. And why is that? During the financial crisis at that time, almost 1,000 banks went bankrupt. Tell me, Mahika, if you can guess, how many of these banks were Islamic banks?
Maybe 10%.
The answer is 0. No one Islamic bankrupt during the financial crisis. Reasons for that, because none of the activities that were made took place at that time is actually okay with the Islamic banking or financing concept. Like what? For example, the loans with the interest and the floating future rates. Loans is non-permissible in Islamic banks, and we don't have that interest. There is other alternatives that, by the way, may be more profitable. The refinance using the same collaterals, issuing bonds backed by the non-performing loans, the debt trading, you can say, the conventional insurance, the unregulated lending. All of these activities is non-permissible in Islamic financing and Islamic banking structures. And all the transactions, you can say, in Islamic banks are all asset-backed transactions that drive a real growth in the economy and so on. So that's why before 2008, yes, there was Islamic banking and financing, definitely. But after the crisis, you can, like, if you search it for a graph for the increase of the demand recognition and volume, multiple times higher.
I'm really interested in Islamic finance, and you mentioned that your family have had backgrounds in the industry. I want to learn a bit more about the development of Islamic finance as a product. Like, where did it originate in a formal sense, and is it based on traditional values in Islam or more regional priorities?
As you mentioned, and as I mentioned before, that was for my family, specifically my father. He's one of the well-known scholars and also professionals in that industry over the past 40 years. Egypt, but even I don't start in Egypt, like in Saudi Arabia, in a region, and now almost worldwide. So people just want to do it because of their faith, that in our religion, you have to do certain activities in terms of dealing with money. As a concept, to make it like easy, money should be a tool for trading, but to not trade in money. This is the concept where it all comes from. And there's then all the accounting and Sharia principles. But also because what I just said a few minutes before, it's a very stable and strong financial product. Some countries or some, let's say, communities decide to do it because of that reasons, not because they are Muslims. Like I can tell you, other than MENA region in Europe, which countries may have the largest Islamic banking or financing?
Outside of MENA?
Outside of MENA, yeah. Islamic finance in general. Let's not talk about factoring.
So it's not to do with the proportion of Islamic population. I would maybe say, could the UK be on the list?
UK number one. In Europe, largest from terms of volume, activities of Islamic finance are taking place. So
And
it may be this or that.
What's the reason behind that, the propensity in the UK?
Not only UK, then you can have this model of UK in all other countries, because Germany also has some. You can find it in USA, you can find it in other countries. As I was mentioning, it's a very stable and a very strong structure, okay? It's not easily at all affected by any financial crisis. Actually, in some cases, it can be more profitable. The economic effect of Islamic finance is much, much larger than the others, okay? So it's not just loans being there and here and there and mortgage and so on. No, most of the products and the bonds that's issued and so on, it's made to finance and invest on economical projects that may drive all the economy to a better place.
Add on this, maybe, there are two things in here. One is what Abderrahman said, there is, this religious origin, which is later reflected in a law, which is called Sharia law, widely used, let's say, in the population that have or adhere to this religion. This is point number one, so it makes sense. Point number two, though, I would say, from my point of view, without being a Muslim myself, is that you have created with this a parallel or a different product, a different banking product, like Abderrahman was saying. So independently whether I'm Muslim or not, I may like this particular financial tool or instrument. In fact, during this particular Cybos conference, I had an encounter with a prospect client of ours from a European country, where I explained to him what we were doing in another market in the West, where a client of ours is also wanting to use this Sharia-backed Islamic factoring product for himself. When I explained to him what we were doing, he said, "Oh my God, but this is exactly what I need." And so without knowing, I call it, the baby has a name, it's called Islamic factoring, but it could well be called different. Yes, it's Islamic factoring, it's Sharia compliant, and we have a product that is compliant according to the law with the fatwa. The second is, if you called it differently, someone else that didn't even know it was Sharia compliant would say, "Oh, I like this product because it serves my my purpose."
I'm just curious, has the name of the product of being called Islamic financing ever put people off what it is at its core? Do people think that it's much more of a religious instrument than it is sort of a financial instrument based on certain religious principles? Do you ever find that?
I would say yes. I would say because we are not calling the other, let's say, the conventional factoring product Christian vis-a-vis Islamic. In fact, if you go back in history, it was not the Europeans or the Americans who invented factoring. It was the Babylonians. So you could call it Babylonian financial instrument 4,000 years ago. We're giving the baby a name because in Islamic finance, like Abdelrahman was saying, it's an emerging financial industry, growing much faster than, let's say, the conventional one, Western one, because of its advantages, as he was talking about. So you could call it, is it because of deep religious belief? And my personal opinion, if I go and travel across the Middle East and I talk to people, yeah, maybe, but maybe not. I would say there is 50-50. There is 50% of people that say, yeah, I'm deep rooted in my faith. And therefore, me, there's only one banking product, namely Islamic finance. Okay. Fully respect, of course. But then there are others that don't care and where belief is not the main source or reason. So in that respect, we're seeing an emergence. And if it's going to be called Islamic finance or factoring in 50 years' time, I have no idea.
Is able to address those regional priorities. Abdelrahman, how does this work specifically in factoring to move beyond Islamic finance as a wide umbrella?
Before answering to this, and about the naming of the product and so on, not few years, but many years ago, it was called ethical finance. Some countries that were not Muslim countries, okay, I don't want to call it that like Islamic. Okay, this is the name, Islamic one, because this is how the structures come from. But some people just called it ethical financing and so on.
Mm-hmm. I've seen it referred to as ethical financing before. And also it ties in directly with sustainable financing. So they just take the exact models of Islamic financing and tie it into the sustainability argument, and it works just the same.
Coming into factoring, because now this is our industry. As I mentioned, factoring is a way of financing. So as was Federico mentioning in the beginning when he was with Arnulf and at the COVID time, he said let's figure out how we can do Islamic factoring on the best way or most feasible way, because Islamic factoring as a concept, okay, it may exist, but the volume of it compared to the volume of Islamic financing is almost nothing, peanuts, something like that compared to really, really a lot. So that was one of the main challenges to create, because this has two sides I will just mention briefly. First, to create a model that fit most of the needs of the factoring clients, because factoring clients may have different needs than other financial needs of another financial product. If it's just a financing for manufacturing and so on. A factoring client can be anyone, can be a retailer, can be a manufacturer, can be a seller, can be whatever. So we need to find the model, because in Islamic finance, there is many financial models and contracts that fit to all of the needs, but we want to gather all of that in one. Not 100%, of course, there is nothing perfect, but at least to cover the most, because the ones that were used in the region or in this industry, in our opinion and in our consultants' opinion, were not that efficient. It fits like one or two client categories and that's it. So that was a main challenge. But we came out with a workflow that we find on a practical basis, and I will come to that now or in a few minutes, that fits most of the needs that you can face as a factoring company being asked by a client of yours. But the second challenge then was to really educate the people about it. Education is lacking in this area of Islamic factoring, because either they doing it the other way and we just come and tell them we found a way or a workflow that is a Sharia compliant, but it's different from what you're doing right now. And especially in these times of what's happening all over the globe, it's not everyone like to be the first mover or to take a step to change the workflow or the structure he's doing. Or either the other case that he's not doing it and he needs to start a new product, but then maybe it's a little bit easier. So this is the two challenges we were facing, but I think we are doing a good job in that. Me and Federico travel all over the globe pitching about this, educating about this. We have all the feedbacks, but for the past couple of years, it's going in a very positive direction. And we already did it with someone. And we can come to that, Maik, also, because we see it's very interesting. Now I've been talking about MENA region, Saudi Arabia, GCC, whatever, the Muslim countries. And maybe you can also, I know I asked you a lot of questions in this podcast, but I will ask you another one. If you can guess who were our first client to go through a very intensive operation to convert all his conventional factoring activities into Islamic one. From which region or which country? You can guess.
I assume again from the question you're leading me to not MENA region. Are we looking in Asia?
Specifically, United States of America. We were very surprised, and we thought, why is this company asking us? But at the end of the day, when we got to learn each other, it made a lot of sense. So in this particular client, I would say the two areas that I mentioned before ticking. The one Number one is, okay, the owner of the company has a Muslim background, fair enough. But the second one is also related to the particular product. It fits particularly well into his area of operation. This is the one that I also mentioned to another client in discussion at Cybos, and he comes from a very European country, and he said, oh, yeah, that fits to me as well. In this respect, I think pure coincidence, I guess, and yeah, we're happy. It's something that we're going to put very bluntly on our next conference when we go to Dubai, which is going to be now in November, and tell everyone, hey guys, we're going to ask the same question. You know that the Islamic fact is becoming, I don't want to call it viral because that would be too much. And we'll ask the same question to them and tell them, hey, on the other side of the Atlantic, where you least expect it, this is happening. And you guys here are thinking about it. So waiting, how can that happen? I'm looking forward to see their faces, especially because we're going to be there with that particular gentleman from the United States on stage. Yeah, so it will be funny.
Hey, enjoying the episode? Tap follow for more. Done? Let's get back to it.
Well, you heard it here first. Islamic finance is going viral. I want to pivot now to talk a bit about AI. We've talked about areas where there's been resistance to Islamic financing, but Vinay, I want to ask, where has there been resistance to deploying factoring software and AI-related technology? And on the flip side, as we've seen opportunity in unexpected places with Islamic factoring, where are you seeing the most opportunity in software implementation?
AI, we are talking about a competitive differentiation that we bring in using AI in the market to highlight on the opportunities in factoring. As of the area what I work right now is how do you generate a real-time risk score for each clients who are actually doing daily business of factoring. That means you have a processing volumes of millions of invoices that comes in, day out. And then can you predict which of the clients will not pay back the invoices in time? So there are payment delays, there is dilution, there are duplicated invoices, potential fraud to be identified upfront. So these are the potential opportunities of AI. Again, to name quite a few, faster client onboarding with know your customer KYC modules, verification checks, compliance checks. So these are the areas that AI had made it so easy now. And can you even predict your cash flow insights with AI? Things are getting easier when AI is in place. When you talk about hurdles that we have in place for AI, again, the greatest challenge that we have is the data to be clean, at least for my use cases that I work right now. That means if I have a lot of noise in the data, the output is again going to be noise. So garbage in, garbage out, to put it very plain. The other important matter to be really looked into is the regulations and compliance. If you talk about European Union, you have GDPR regulations to be kept in place, and that may not be the same for a different geographical location. So these compliance checks were most of the AI models black box AI models. So you don't know what's really happening behind the scenes. How did you really come to a conclusion that so-and-so client is risky? For a regulator to understand and make it very transparent to them, then it becomes a little tricky and hard. So this is some of the challenges that we face. The other challenge is the implementation cost. And now we are all happy using ChatGPT and Claude or whatever AI software platforms that we use on a day-to-day basis. But if in case I need to have my own top-notch AI platform just to be customized for my use case, these algorithms and AI models are pretty much very intensive, computationally intensive, and then the server setup and maybe GPUs required for setting up, these are going to be very extremely costly. So these are the other challenges that I think of. And maybe to name one would be the economic trends, recession. In case you see the time that we are going through, the automobile sector is not doing that great. In these scenarios, we need AI to be retrained. That means the older AI, which captured the patterns of the market, may not be relevant at this point. That means I need to retrain the model, and so that the AI can understand the dynamics in the market. So these are some of the challenges I could name quickly then.
And at what level is AI in factoring implemented? Like, does it assist in higher level sort of analysis, or do you see it phasing out some of these more junior entry level roles where you're just essentially doing brunt work?
Yeah, when it comes to like the points I mentioned, credit risk scoring, real-time credit risk scoring, onboarding of a client is already there in place. That means if in case I have today, the number of head count of my clients is maybe 1 lakh clients, and now it's gonna be 1 million tomorrow. So I don't need a new employees to be hired just for the sake of new volumes of invoice that is getting into the system. AI can still handle that. That's if in case I have a complex dispute to be settled. For instance, you have again a very huge invoice amount that is a dispute, and then do you want really an AI to solve this problem? So you may have to play around with emotions, right? And the complex negotiations and customer relationship in place. So then you need human in the loop. But on the other hand, if it was just a simple query, whether my invoice so-and-so with the invoice number, is it being funded or not? Has the payment been released? AI can answer that. You don't accost an employee in a company, factoring company, to answer this question. Simplified, put in, I would say, a day-to-day routine, a job like manual entry and direct query of question on factoring from a ledger, for instance, accounting ledger. I think AI could do that very easily.
I would go beyond what Vinny is saying, Mahika, and I agree with him what the current situation is, because this is what we can do already. When I joined FCOM as a supplier, we brought artificial intelligence with a product that was developed already 12 years, 13 years, 15 years ago in doing the matching of open invoices with incoming payments. And that was taking away the nitty-gritty daily work of matching, which still happens in most factoring companies. I don't know why they're not buying our product, because it would make their life easier, but this is it. But being as it is, when we started doing that, I said, you know what? Factoring is one of those industries that could practically work without human intervention if all the data was clean. Right now, it's making the life easier for those people who understand the business, with the underscore who understand the business. It wouldn't help to anyone who has no idea about the business, because then you would probably take the wrong decisions, even with the intervention of the AI, or most likely because of the AI. This is when people like Vinny and our clients are important. In the future, I'm not speculative about it, but the way I see how fast this is moving, I would say in a short period of time, this could change.
Don't say that, because you'll talk yourself out of a job. I want to go a bit further into what you were saying about it helping people who understand the business and augmenting that, because there's a real danger that as AI is able to do this entry-level work, which is often pretty foundational in training young talent, essentially what's going to happen when all of the people who, quote, understand the business retire, and then for decades no new talent has been trained because AI has been taught to do that very basic level of work. Do you not think that that's a fear, especially in factoring, where, as Abdulrahman highlighted, education is a big barrier?
Right. So you would have to have the Abdelrahmans of the world who are born in a family, and with 22 years or 23, you have 22 or 23 years of already business experience. Joke apart, I would say it is happening already, Mahika. We see it in our industry, but even more in adjacent industries where entry-level staff is going to have trouble. If they will have the trouble, then how do you create the new employees with experience, right? Or what is experience means or will mean in the future? It will have a different meaning to have experience in the future, because the experience will be given to you adjacently with something, and you will have to create your own experience and feed the system with your experience.
Is there any sort of safeguarding being taken as this AI software the development is accelerating at a pretty exponential pace? In these phases of development, are there any measures being taken as, how can we ensure that this is continuing to augment everything that is done in the factoring industry and not just entirely making humans redundant? Even if a machine can, Vinay mentioned the emotional aspect of some of these transactions. Is there any other attention being given to the human contribution?
Absolutely. In this particular case, I'm back to Vinny. Everything that can be done redundantly, or that is redundant jobs that could and should be done by the supporting system, a machine, because innovation, as we have seen over the last 200 years, has only brought us, let's say, more wealth, more well-being, etc. So since the Industrial Revolution, we have seen that. And Yes, many people were laid off in particular industries when the Industrial Revolution came, and then the electronic revolution came and digital revolution came. So every time we jumped and everyone was super scared about losing. But I guess it's about changing your focus into something new. I guess this is what we will have to do, Mahika. Always be smart and getting on the next level.
In the Luddite uprising during the Industrial Revolution in the UK, people were terrified in the hand looming industry that machine looms would take their jobs, which they did.
Yes.
You just, I guess, have to adapt with the times. I want to tie together like what we've been talking about through this conversation. Abdurrahman, do you think that there's applications within Islamic factoring on the AI sense? And Vinay, to you as well, how do you think AI implementation correlates with Islamic factoring? Are the two priorities at odds, or do they help one another? Vinay, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, when I think about it, the time that we're in, agentic AI, the time of agentic AI, right? So the jobs that I do right now, I could split it to these agents. And for instance, to name an example, when the development of the software that I make right now, there are front-end dashboards that need to be made. And then if in case I need to have entry-level programmer to do the development of this flashy dashboards, it's going to take a year. And then these agents or AI augmented technical expertise could actually help me do this job just in a month or 2 months max. So that's the advantage that we have in. And to unleash new markets like Islamic factoring, even find potential new clients, there are different use cases of where AI can fit in. Right now, even though I'm actually working currently only on the specific domain of risk, but this risk identifications could actually span across markets, be it Islamic factoring, be it the clients that we already have, be it new financial markets that we talk. But in principle, we have a common trend of patterns that payments are being delayed, invoices are being duplicated. It's the same old fraud story that comes again and again. So this trend, AI knows this trend and pattern, and it reacts and give these flag alert signals that can be useful.
Thanks a lot, Vinay. And Abdurrahman, over to you. Are there any fundamental principles of AI which you think work in unison with Islamic factoring values?
Yeah, definitely AI can help, especially like a software house like us, building a Sharia-compliant software product, because let's talk a little bit from the workflow point of view. Through the process of executing a Islamic or Sharia compliant transaction, there is a lot, for example, let's say documentation checks. So even if we have a lot of automation, there is some things like we need the document to be read in a smart way. Okay, there is reading tools, but it reads numbers, reads few things, but we need it to be read in a smart way. So to make sure all the components of this document, for example, is compliant with the contract we had in the beginning, the Islamic financing contract or the Islamic factoring contract. So for example, documentation checks. Of course, the risk, because risk is a huge part in Islamic finance. So this would also help us to mitigate the risk and so on. So AI using that tools will help us a lot. It will decrease the human intervention, because even if it's automated and so on, there is some parts that maybe even force it to be done by a human or to be checked by a human. So AI can replace this human intervention and make the process much, much faster. Then it will serve the efficiency time and also to make it with very large volumes.
I have to add on this, because most likely one of the reasons why Islamic finance or Islamic factoring in this particular one hasn't emerged as we expected, because it's seen as complex. How can you take complexity out of something? Well, support it with the instruments. And the instruments that we provide take away the perceived or existing complexity out of the workflow, meaning that now it's like, oh, okay, if it's that simple, well, then I will do it.
It will help also the Sharia boards to check the compliancy. It will help them extract the details of the product or the process, so you can have the acceptance of any Sharia. Because to do an Islamic financing product or activity, you need the acceptance of the Sharia board. And this takes time. So it will make it also easier for them to check and to say whether it's compliance or not.
Thanks a lot, guys. It's been a really all-encompassing discussion. I feel like we've covered quite a lot of ground there. So I want to end by just wrapping things up with the challenge of asking you guys to tell the future a bit. So from here, AFCOM celebrated 25 years since its foundation in 2025. And probably if I was to ask you what the biggest trends in the last 25 years have been, you could talk about Islamic financing and entering into these risky markets. You could talk about AI implementation and deploying across the world and especially across factoring. I want to challenge you guys to think from the year 2050, looking back on the last 25 years. What do you think will be the standout trend? Maybe keep your answers to like one sentence or less. Federico, maybe let's start with you.
Right now, factoring is about 4% global GDP worldwide. I would say in 2050, it will be at least 10%.
Thank you. Abdulrahman?
If I talk a bit from my side of Islamic factoring, now it's almost nothing in terms of volume compared to the factoring volume, the 4% that Federico talked about. But in 2050, definitely, I see it as a very strong financial product. Mature. Maybe we can reach the maturity by 2050, and now it's almost starting. I see a lot of potential just to cross the challenges I just mentioned in this podcast.
Thank you. And Vinay, for some closing words.
I think the next 25 years of AI would mean to keep it very simple and plain. Just a button click or just a question, and then you have risky clients highlighted or your very complex query from a consultant point of view being answered with AI all at your fingertips.
I guess expect bigger volumes, more maturity, more simplicity. Lots to look forward to in factoring. Federico, Vinay, Abdulrahman, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a very engaging discussion and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you, Mahika. Thank you.
Thank you. You too.